So it's been a week since the finish of the Vendée Globe, and what we're going to try and do is have an overview of the entire race in under 4 minutes and have a look at the the key features that did define the race. So the fleet here started on the 8th of November. We're going to follow Boris on the tracker to do this, and we'll immediately see that they sail straight into the first of the North Atlantic weather systems. Here we have a very strong cold front that passed over the fleet and caused several boats to have to turn back, including Chiral, to make repairs. And also caused several other damages on boats like Occitan and New Rest. Once the fleet had managed to sail through this, they were then faced with getting towards Storm Theta, which was blocking their way to the South Atlantic trade winds. Here you have Storm Theta, and you can see Alex Thompson on Hugo Boss was sailing right into the centre of that, experiencing over 50 knots of wind, with the rest of the fleet all very close behind. Once they'd managed to get through Theta, they were into the nice trade winds, which brought them down towards the doldrums, and then once they'd got through the doldrums, they were into the South Atlantic trade wind conditions. Once they got into this area, though, there was a really complicated St. Helena high pressure, which meant lots of jibes, lots of manoeuvres. This is also the moment that Boris had to climb his mast to release his Jenica, which had got stuck at the top of the mast, luckily in quite light wind conditions, so it was good he managed to make that repair, because straight away they were into the South Atlantic first low pressure system, and this was where Kevin Escoffier had this big moment with his boat where it broke in half and he had to be rescued, and Boris was one of the assisting boats in that rescue. Carrying on, the fleet then sailed through something known as the Agulhas Current, and several boats had actually hit something, including Sam Davies and Sebastian Simon on Arkea Paprec, forcing them to retire into Cape Town. And then the fleet were faced with another strong weather system. Here we can see Charlie Dallon sailing right in the middle of this Southern Ocean depression, also experiencing 50 knots of wind, and it was very similar for Thomas Royan as well. The fleet at this point, though, were all still relatively close together in terms of the Vendée Globe, within only a few hundred miles of each other, so the racing was quite close. And at this point, Boris actually encountered seeing a few of his other competitors. Once they got to the south of Australia, at one point there was 5 boats all lined up together, racing in lighter winds. At this point, at the front of the fleet, there was a close fight. Yannick Besteven had managed to extend a little bit on Thomas Royan and also Charlie Dallon, since they had both had damages. And this is also the moment there was a strong high pressure blocking the more direct route along the ice exclusion zone, and it meant that some boats had to actually sail upwind in easterly wind conditions to keep making distance towards the east and towards Cape Town. But still, you can see this is where Charlie and Yannick managed to make a bit of separation on the rest of the fleet, while there was still quite a close bunch not too far away. And on the approach to Cape Horn, this is where Boris had his moment with the mainsail, in which he had to drop the mainsail to make a repair since it had got ripped. And this is where he lost a few more miles and was sat in about 9th or 10th place next to VMB Mayenne. But once we get to the South Atlantic, we can see that this whole situation completely changes. Initially, Yannick manages to gain quite a few miles, but very quickly we'll see that along the South Atlantic convergence zone, it was actually blocking the route north, and it meant the leading boats, especially Yannick, who at this point had a 600-mile lead, saw this lead completely disappear to the 10 boats behind him. And as we'll see in a second, this lead just completely disappears, as well as Yannick having some other damages. It allowed a few other boats to slip past him as they got back into the easterly trade winds back up the South Atlantic. Going through the doldrums, we saw Boris lose a few miles here, being slightly further west in this doldrums conditions, allowing a few boats towards the east to gain a few miles on him. But due to his 100% status with his boat, he was in full mode. He had both his foils working. He was able to gain back these miles and move up from 6th place up to 2nd eventually, as they sailed in the North Atlantic easterly trade winds. On the final approach to the finish, it proved quite challenging in terms of strategy. Quite a few different jibes to decide which weather system to follow, and you can see there was this final separation before the fleet got into the finish, and Boris finished the race in 5th place. So there's a quick overview of the Vendée Globe 2020 to 2021.